with an opinion piece today. So if you looked at the description, it's about the Puff Daddy docuseries that HBO Max put out. I watched all 5 episodes. It was definitely interesting. But before we get into all that, please go ahead and subscribe, like, share, all that stuff, because this is going to be an interesting take on this. Well, it may not be interesting to you, but it is what it is. So, for those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Rebecca. This is my channel, Red True Crime. I talk about cases. I talk about pop culture cases. I talk about all of it. So, if you like this, stick around, subscribe, share, comment, like. If you don't know what you want to do yet, stick around and watch. You might hear something. So, there are 5 episodes. And this docuseries was very, very, very inclusive and detailed about the beginnings of P. Diddy, where he came from. It also did a very good job of showing a pattern of behavior, establishing that. And let me pull this down a little bit more. There we go. So, and Stephen A. Smith, he's an ESPN broadcaster. He actually has his own YouTube channel where he talks about things outside of sports. And he brought this up because he actually personally knows Puff Daddy. And he gave his opinion on it too, and I'm going to get back to that in a minute. But, you know, the first episode talks about his upbringing, you know, about who his mom is, who his father was, where he's from. You know, they talk to childhood friends. They also talk to victims of his, witnesses to things he's done. There's video segments they play that came from people's phones. It's very, very, very inclusive. You find out that Sean Puffy Combs lost his father when he was a toddler. Melvin Combs. And you also find out that his father is not who he thought he was. Because when Sean Combs lost his dad, he was a toddler. He was like 2. And Sean Combs' father had a complicated history. Let me explain that why. Those of you who are not familiar with New York gangster history, let me explain this. His father was a drug pusher, kingpin, whatever you want to call it, and he worked directly with Frank Lucas. I'm doing well, everybody. Hi. So, Frank Lucas was the godfather of Harlem. Frank Lucas inherited that from Bumpy Johnson, who had worked hand in hand with Lucky Luciano and the gangsters of the 20s and 30s. But Frank Lucas, it actually did a movie that Denzel Washington played Frank Lucas called American Gangster. So if you have not seen that, I recommend seeing that. It's very detailed. So Melvin Combs was murdered by Frank Lucas, and it was because he had turned state's evidence against Frank Lucas. Now, Sean Combs was told his father died in a car accident. What actually happened, he was shot and killed inside of his car. And that's what happened. And when P. Diddy was growing up, he lived with that information until he found out when he was a teenager who his dad actually was. And now his father, you know, then he became obsessed wanting to be like his father. And I think a lot of that goes into his behavior of who he is today, is that. But it goes into more stories about a woman. She talks on the docuseries. She's shrouded in darkness because she doesn't want to show her identity. She talks about how when she was a freshman at Howard University, which is where Puffy went to school, that he was romantically involved with a girl in their dorm, and he drug her out of the dorm and beat her with a belt in the courtyard in front of everybody. Nobody stopped him. when he was younger, when he was starting up into music with Uptown Records, he took up with a woman named Misa Hilton, who he grew up with. She's the mother of his oldest child. He was beating on her and her parents. He was charged with civil domestic violence on that. Um, it's just like there's a pattern of behavior going through all of this. One of the victims that's actually suing him right now gave her story about how she was assaulted on a pool table. You see her face, you see her name. She's not hiding. None of these people are hiding. You get the guy who drove him away from the club shooting that he did when he was there with J-Lo. That's there. The producer that's suing him for being assaulted, Little Rod Jones, is also in there and gives his truth. Puffy's got a lot of problems. There was actually another woman. She was the assistant to Cassie Ventura and gave testimony about how what she saw the aftermath of between Cassie and Diddy when they got into it behind closed doors. In fact, it was interesting because she said Cassie couldn't go to the hospital. She couldn't call the police because she was terrified of what Puffy would do because he had that kind of pull. He had that kind of reach. And they had to take her to another person who was a doctor, who was a friend, to get her treated because she was hurt pretty bad. So between 5 episodes, they give a huge backstory on him and more stories. They allude to him possibly being involved with Tupac's death, Biggie's death, Kim Porter's death. They bring all of this up. And I don't see how he's ever going to get out of jail, to be perfectly honest. Stephen A. Smith, now I'm going to get into him. He actually went on his podcast and admonished HBO Max, and Investigation Discovery, and the federal government for allowing them to do this docuseries and to release it. And he said, he's never going to get a fair trial. Now, Stephen A., being a sports anchor on ESPN and having his own podcast on YouTube and whatnot, he has a right to his opinion. And he actually knows P. Diddy. They've known each other for 20 years. And he doesn't think he's done anything, actually, I shouldn't say that. He's known him for a long time. And he does not feel that, based on everything in the docuseries, that he is going to get a fair trial. And my attitude is, he wasn't going to get a fair trial the second CNN released the video of him beating Cassie Ventura by that elevator. That wasn't going to happen. My take on P. Diddy is he's a monster, a lunatic, and needs to be behind bars for the rest of his life. This is a man that has too much money, too much power, and can literally hurt anyone he wanted to. And we don't need that. He needs to stay where he is. If even 1% of what these people are saying is true, he needs to stay away. Just like R. Kelly. It took a little while, but once the federal government got involved, that's when they got him. And they got him good. He's never coming out of jail. Never. Nor should he. When you are dealing with people who are predatory in nature, especially when it's sexual, these are people, in my opinion, that can never be rehabbed and can never be around decent people. And I'm not upset that he may not get a fair trial, because you know what? He doesn't deserve a fair trial. Not with everything he has done. So I highly recommend that you go to HBO Max and you watch that series and make your own judgment, because it's very eye-opening. And it just confirms the things we've been seeing online and on YouTube and all that about him. Other people who've been shrouded in darkness, who didn't want to show their identity. This shows all of that. This tells that story. And it does lend to a pattern of behavior that now makes sense. This guy was obsessed with being a gangster like his father. He succeeded, I also believe that anybody who knew the things he was doing is complicit in what has happened. Usher, Justin Bieber are possible victims. Little Rod Jones is a victim. You know, hit the guy's last personal assistant, a victim, you know. And he actually released, there's actual camera footage from his cell phone in this docuseries that he released showing Diddy being nuts. So, you know, these are all things that needs to be addressed, and he needs to be held accountable. Especially all the innuendo that he may have been part of Tupac's death and Biggie's death and Heavy D's death and Kim Porter's death. I mean, there's so many bodies around this man. It is absolutely terrifying how many people have died around him, you know. And I bet Jennifer Lopez can tell a few stories too. But like I said, I highly recommend watching the docuseries. It's 5 episodes. It's one of those things you can't stop watching. You just go all the way through it. And I highly recommend it. So again, this is Rebecca with Red True Crime. I'm going to hop off here. I just wanted to give you my take on Puff Daddy because, like I said, I don't think he's getting out. I think he's going to do life, and as well as I think he should do life. And yeah. So everybody have a great day. I'll be back later. I got another docuseries to talk about. But again, this is Rebecca with Red True Crime. Like, subscribe, share, comment, please, because you get the algorithm out there. Talk about these cases, to talk about things, and I appreciate it. So thank you again for taking the time to pop in, and I'll be back a little bit later, and you'll have a great day. Bye.